welcome to July Supervision. It'll be just me again this month. Amanda is still in Seattle. So we have a few updates to go over for this month and also a few poll questions at the end that hopefully people will be able to reply to us through email or even on the supervision calls if you decide to come to those this month. So starting off for updates for the project, just a reminder to review the follow-up email from last month's supervision. There was quite a lot of information on there, not a lot of information that will be helpful moving forward, so make sure to review that. One of the things we talked about last month was the suicide assessment guidelines, and so I wanted to let you all know that we have handed that out to other people to review it externally, just to get some extra set of eyes on there and to get more opinion about how that should look. So we're still in the process of working through that. We did incorporate some things given the topics that we discussed last month. One of the things that we included in it now was to use your own judgment depending on the emotional state of the participant. So if the participant seems really upset, then that might be a time where you give them more of an option to end the interview or to give them a break. So really using your judgment as far as where you think the interview should go and what your next steps should be as far as that suicide assessment. One thing that will come from it, we're hoping to create a laminated handout that you'll be able to have for the suicide assessment guidelines. This handout will be a guide for you to use to read before the interview, just to refresh yourself of what you would do in a situation like that, and to review afterwards to make sure that you follow that protocol in that situation. We'd like to avoid bringing that out during the interview so as not to kind of startle the participant that you have the sheet of what to do if they have suicidal thoughts. It's just easier if you kind of know it offhand. So it might be helpful to review that before interviews once we get that sent out. We also have information on here about FedEx pickups from your house. That's something that was brought up last month. So here are some steps for doing that, getting a pickup from your house. In order to do that, you're going to have to create your own FedEx account. So you'll have to be able to do that if you don't already have it. We also request that if you're ever making a pickup to your house, you have to be home for that pickup. And that's simply because we don't want boxes with information written out on it sitting on your porch waiting for someone to pick it up. And we also ask that you only schedule pickups for the weekdays. The only weekend pickup day is Saturday, and it's much more expensive on a Saturday than it is during the week, so it just makes it easier to make it either the Monday or the Friday as opposed to the weekend. We also recently were purchasing phone jack adapters for old phones. So for the phone interviews, some people have had difficulties using the headset because the jack doesn't fit into a phone that's not a smartphone. So we're buying some adapters so that people with older phones can use that headset properly. Another reminder is the service member return date. Last month we talked a bit about how there tends to be some variation between the D2 interview and the R1 interview and when that happens and how long that gap is. So because of that, we added a line in the daily diary, a reminder sheet that prompts you to ask the SO for an estimated return date if you can get it, and that way, and for you to put it on your IRF if you can remember to do that, so that we get that information back and we can make the call if necessary. The IRF has been updated to add that field in there, so you will get prompted to ask about the service member return date on the IRF. So that again will remind you to ask the participant if you haven't already. As far as the interview process goes, last month we also talked a bit about icebreakers for phone interviews. Sometimes in the phone interviews you're interviewing a family you've never talked to before, so it's hard to build rapport right away with that family if you haven't talked to them about things that they might be able to talk about, like hobbies or like different activities that they might have been doing when you went to their house that time. So it gets a little more awkward to try and build rapport over the phone. So we just listed a couple things here that might help you to build rapport and to start up a conversation. Generally we want to avoid anything that was related to the interviews or the content within their interviews, so not really talking about the military very much, or not talking about their experience in the military, just because those are things that come with the interview and they may feel like the interview has already started almost in a way. So trying to keep it light and keep it building rapport but not too personal. If anyone else has more suggestions about that, feel free to let the team know or let us know so that we can spread that information. Another reminder is about consent and assent. So that's just a reminder that all kids should be consenting and assenting if they're participating in the FIT or the interview, we need to have all those forms back at the office in case we ever get audited, to make sure that we have those participants' consent. We also have something in here about recording. We would prefer that the recorder be paused in between the joint session and the interview, just in case we accidentally record something the participant didn't intend to be recorded. That way we just kind of keep the confidentiality and allow it to be more private, so that no personal conversations are caught on tape as we're kind of transitioning from joint session to interview. So try and do that as much as possible. And the last couple things on the agenda are polls, just seeing people's opinions about these things and getting some insight from you as the interviewers. The first one here is the suicide assessment follow-ups. Someone mentioned the idea that perhaps we could do a follow-up call with the participants to check in after an interview where they've kind of expressed suicidal thoughts. And so we were wondering what you think about having the interviewer who interviewed that participant do the follow-up call the next day, as opposed to someone from the office, just to kind of keep that rapport. We were worried that if someone from the office did it, it looked like someone went and called somebody, and now everybody knows about what they experienced and what they said during their interview. So maybe it'll keep them more comfortable talking to you when they've already talked to you about it in the interview. So let us know what you think about that. Another poll is about the percent drop and the retention rates of families. We've definitely seen some increase in retention after we've put someone on that to focus on getting those families back, which is great. So we've definitely seen a change in retention rates, and we've really recovered some families that we thought were lost from the project, so that's excellent. But we've still noticed some unfortunate trends in participation. So from D2 to R1, you can see there's a drop of 11.93%, and then from R1 to R2, there's a drop of 12.86%. So because you guys are out in the field more often, you get to see the family's experiences. We were wondering if you had any insight as to why this drop was happening, if there's anything that we can do to help retain those families or to help connect with them so that they feel like they do want to participate for the rest of the project. So let us know what you think about that as well. And then lastly, an interview brought up a question about insurance. What to do if you were to get in a car accident on the way to an interview, or when you were in somebody else's car on the way to the interview after the meeting. And generally the answer that I've received is that any insurance that you're going to get is going to be through your insurance provider, and so contacting your insurance to see what kind of things you can be covered for would be helpful. But I also wanted to open this up to the interviewers so that we could give advice to people who weren't sure of what kind of insurance to have. So if you could, just let us know what you've done to cover yourself in case of something happening while at work or while doing an interview for our project, so that other people can kind of see and have themselves be prepared as well. And that's it for July supervision. Again, feel free to call in on our supervision calls for the second week of July. Again, those are optional, so remember that you don't have to come, but that it has been a generally great discussion, and people tend to bring up a lot of things that don't happen on the agenda, so it always is good to call in if you have any questions or if you just want to connect with people. So we hope to hear from you then. If you have any comments about the agenda or any answers for the polls, please feel free to give us a call, email the whole group, or come to supervision and let us know. Have a great July, everyone.